Where's my script? I do? Where? Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's Tuesday, April the 5th. Welcome to Full Local Government Committee. We have about 13 bills on our agenda, and some of them we may not get to, and some we will. So thank y'all for being here. At this time, I'll call the committee to order and have the clerk please call the roll.
Representatives Calfee, Carr, Chisholm, Gant, Helton, Hodges, Holsclaw, Leatherwood, Love, Manis, Miller, Moody, Moon, Reedy, Rudd, Shaw, Williams, Vice Chairman Wright, Chairman Crawford.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let the record reflect that Representative Manis is excused. Does any of the members have any personal orders or announcements? Representative Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got some constituents from Clarksville here, Cliff and Kristen Malone and their daughter Hannah. If y'all could welcome them, please.
Any other announcements or personal orders from the committee? Seeing none, we'll jump into our agenda today. Oh, sorry. Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly want to recognize we have some of our students from Metro Public Schools here. If they will stand. I think they're specifically from Hume Fogg Magnet School. Glad to have y'all here.
Any other personal orders? Seeing none, we'll jump into our agenda. Today, item number 1, House Bill 1201, without objection, will be rolled to the Hill. Item number 2 today on our agenda is House Bill 0645 by Chairman Faison. Without objection, they'll be rolled to the call of the chair. Item number 3, House Bill 2842 by our very own Leader Camper. Got a proper motion and second. I do see it has an amendment. May we have your drafting code?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amendment drafting code 016389.
That is correct. Got a proper motion and second on the amendment. Leader Camper, you're recognized on your amendment. I do see it rewrites the bill. Would you like for us to place that on the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Without objection, all in favor of amendment number 16389 going on the bill, please say aye. Opposed, no. The amendment is now on the bill. Leader Camper, you're recognized on your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Mr. Chairman, members, I want to thank you for working with me on this bill. Last week, I was here trying to get the language exactly in a position where members could agree to allow the local election commission a permissive action. What this would do would allow county election commissions to designate a restroom facility in the building in which an election is being held for campaign workers to go to work. It's completely permissive. The language says may. It's not a mandatory situation.
Question has been called on the bill. I guess we're ready to vote. All those in favor of House Bill 2842, please say aye. Opposed, no. Noes have it. Your bill fails.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Item number 4 on today's agenda, House Bill 2489 by Chairman Dixie. Do I have a motion or a second? Got a proper motion and second. I do see it has an amendment. Chairman Dixie, would you give us your drafting code?
016981.
Okay, I do see that this amendment is untimely, so we will not be accepting that amendment. You will have to run your bill on the merits of where it stands. Do you still want to run Amendment 16393?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment going on the bill, please say aye. Opposed, no. Your bill is now amended. Chairman Dixie, you're recognized on your bill, 2489.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I start, I'd like to request a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, we won't be able to do that because we've already voted on the amendment. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just a parliamentary inquiry in reference to the First Amendment, untimely amendment. Do we have an opportunity to vote the untimely amendment up or down? I know in some committees we do that. I didn't know if it was, if we did it in this committee.
Representative Miller, I know it's been done in other committees, but we've not accepted an untimely filed amendment, and I'm not going to start today. I'd
Thank you,
have
Mr.
to
Chairman.
Apologize to everybody we've not accepted. You're recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman and committee. I'm excited to speak with you about this Tennessee Student Voter Act, because although I'm technically the sponsor of the bill, the real sponsors were high school students that first approached my office about this legislation last fall, which we met them earlier. In fact, although they won't be speaking, some of them are here this morning, which they were introduced earlier. And I understand there are others watching from their classrooms. They did the research on our voter registration and turnout numbers and reviewed our laws in comparison to other states. They came up with bill language and even built a website to help spread awareness about the work they're doing. They were here last week to testify to present the amended bill to the election subcommittee. As amended, the Tennessee Voter Act would simply require all high schools to inform each high school senior that upon reaching the age of 18, the student may be eligible to vote and provide them with information about voter eligibility, how to register to vote, and details about the supplemental voter registration conducted at the student's high school. In their testimony, the students noted that the legislation would align with the Ann Dallas Dudley Award, an initiative recently launched by the Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, to reward high schools that register the most students to vote. We also learned that a number of schools are already notifying students about voter registration. This bill will make certain that those notifications are providing accurate information or aligned with the goals of the Secretary of State. I know we all agree that our nation and our state are stronger when every eligible Tennessean is registered to vote and cast a ballot on election day. And I know we all agree that it's exciting to see students so passionate about exercising their right to vote. It's been a privilege to work with these students, and I favorably ask for your vote.
You've heard the explanation from the sponsor. Is there any questions? Chairman Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. And to the sponsor, our Secretary of State is doing this now, and my question is, I guess theoretical. Anyway, I'm gonna ask a question. You know, I'm in the junior, and I failed 2 years, and I'm 18. This says it has to be seniors. If we miss somebody, are we going to leave ourselves open for a lawsuit? We'll miss somebody, or we won't. And I think that maybe this is repetitive since the Tennessee Secretary of State's already doing it. And I just don't know that if we can fulfill this and get everything right and get it right. And of course, it's going to cost the locals some money. I don't know if it's anything in the budget or not, but I don't like to pass an unfunded mandate too. Can you answer to those questions, please?
Chairman Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it costs no money. There's no fiscal note attached to this. So
Okay.
there's no local mandate. There's no unfunded mandate, number one. Number two, the bill states seniors, only seniors that are involved in this. And some schools are already providing this information to students, but we know not all of them are. This legislation ensures that all Tennessee high school seniors understand who is eligible to vote, when they can vote, how to do it, and additionally, it would ensure that the information provided is accurate, unbiased, and aligned with the Secretary of State's goals for student registration, voter registration.
Chairman Carr.
Okay, then I guess back to and I know I put 2 or 3 different things in there to my one question. I'm 18, I'm eligible to vote. They're up there taking votes, but I don't get the opportunity because I'm not a senior. Is that correct? Is that the way the bill reads? It's just for seniors?
Chairman Dixie?
This bill allows seniors to vote. I mean, to be notified. They're already notifying if you are voting age in high school. If you're 18, there is a procedure where they're doing it already. This is another tool in the toolbox to make sure that no one is left behind. For those students who may be turning 18 after the election, but are still in school, this allows them to understand how to register to vote, where they can register to vote, and when to register to vote.
Okay,
Chairman? Chairman Carr, you recognize.
thank you, Representative. I'm still not comfortable with the bill, so I'll be a no one, but I just wanted you to know that. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Love?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Dixie, thank you for bringing this legislation. I think in the subcommittee, I gave an example of how in my own situation, I was 17 when I graduated from high school because my birthday was in December. I did not get to participate in these schools, or would not have been able to participate in the school's regular process of registering people to vote because, according to state law, you have to be turning 18.
Check your mic, Representative Love.
I just cut it back on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have to be turning 18 before the next election in order to register to vote at 17. And so this piece of legislation, from what I can see, would have informed me as a senior in high school who was 17 that at age 18, I would be eligible to vote. And I like that because you do miss some students sometimes who are 17 and aren't turning 18 before the next election and cannot participate in the voter registration process that happens at our high schools. So I appreciate the students who had the wherewithal and thoughtfulness to think about how impactful it could be to register, not to register, but to let students know they can register to vote. And the fact they want to help spread the news among their colleagues. So thank you for not only bringing the bill, but also allowing these students to engage in the process of helping to shape policy in our state. Thank you.
Chairman Dixie?
Yes, my mic was turned off as well. Thank you, Representative Love, for those comments. But these students worked really hard on this, and this is not something that they just started this particular year. They've been working on this for a couple of years. Like I said before, they even had a website to try to gain support for their bill. And this is also, I fell into that category that you did. I was 17 when I graduated from high school. But in another caveat for another day that we may need to address is I went away to college. So when I turned 18, I was in a different state. And so I was not eligible to vote in that state because I wasn't a resident, but I didn't come home. We were not of means, so I didn't have a lot of money to come back home to just register to vote. So I had to stay there until I got a chance to come back home for the summer. So these kids have worked really hard. It's very important that we engage our young people in democracy early in the process and make them feel a part of the process. So they understand, because this is their future. We sit here and we vote on a lot of things that impact their lives. And so it's important for them to get engaged in it early on in the process so they know that it will be a lifelong challenge for them or obligation for them to be a part of this.
Leader Gant, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not want to interrupt this debate that we've got, but I also want to recognize from my district in McNairy County, I've got high school students that are going through Leadership McNairy County. And if you guys will all stand up, I want you guys to be recognized here. So give them a round of applause. We just got through going through a robust conversation in my office, and so the timing of this committee worked out well so they could be with us and see how we work here in the committee, Mr. Chairman. And so I'm proud to have these guys and girls up here, and they've got a bright future ahead of them. So thank you all very much for being here. Hope y'all have a great day.
Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you. I had a quick question. And maybe relates to your bill. I thought that our schools could fill out the application to register prior to their 18th birthday. I think my kids have done that. Does that not happen in your school, or could you answer that question for me?
Chairman Dixie?
If you turning 18 within the 6 months of the election, but school will not be in. So let's say if you're turning 18 over the summer
Mhm.
and the school's not in, but the election's in November, then they will allow you to register to vote. But that's the question here. That's why these students saw a need. It wasn't happening on a regular basis at their school, and it's not a blanket. It's not a requirement of where it's done equally across the state. Some schools are doing it, some are not. So we want to just ensure, like I said earlier, just another tool in the toolbox to make sure that no one slips through the cracks, that everyone has the opportunity to at least know how to register to vote, where to register to vote, and about any supplemental voter registrations.
Chairman Williams?
So the schools in your district do not offer this to their students now, or they
Chairman-
do?
Lady
Not
Dixie?
blanket. It's not a blanket. Some do, some don't. That's why, again, they saw a need for this bill to come.
Chairman Williams?
Those that do, is it through the local election administrator that does it, or is it like your bill states through the Department of Ed, or through the education system, through the local LEA?
It's supposed to be through the local election commission.
Chairman Williams?
Okay, I guess I support your bill. I'm just a little bit confused that, are you concerned at all that if your bill passes, that the local election, those that are done by the local election administration, for instance, in Putnam County, the election administrator handles at the 3 high schools in my community, they handled the registration drive at the high schools. So by making this a requirement of the LEA, because it looks like it's shall through the local LEA, do you perceive any conflict between the local LEA and the local election administrator?
Chairman Dixie?
No, I do not perceive any conflict or between the two, but I think they could work together to just make it that the action stronger. Because one, we do have the election commission doing theirs, and then you would have the school sending an additional email just as a reminder that, hey, this is coming up. This is an addition to, not instead of.
Okay, and it doesn't say, I think not only in subcommittee, but today, it doesn't say that it's an email, but it can be an email. It just says it has to notify them. So
And
which is it? Excuse me.
Chairman Dixie?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
Okay, I was gonna say that when I use notify, because now in this day and age, technology is just the way they communicate in high school students. You have a high school student, I have a high school student, and 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, they communicate via email. So I divert to using the word email when instead of saying notify, because that's
Okay.
how my students, my daughters communicate with their teachers and their administrators at this point. And I would assume this is the easiest way and the cheapest, it has no cost, it's cost-effective way in order to get this information out to the seniors.
Chairman Williams?
So say at an organizational meeting at the beginning of the school year for seniors, if they got together, they could hand them a hard copy, just a piece of paper saying, sometime this year, you'll have a right to vote, and this is how you do it. Would that meet the requirement that you're spelling out here in the bill?
Chairman Dixie?
Yes, sir. In addition to when they send information about the prom, which is a big thing. I just had my daughter go to the prom this past weekend. I'm still working myself through that. But also about the graduation cap and gowns and things, information about the graduation. So those are type of things that there's several opportunities where they could insert that notification.
Okay. What about
Chairman Williams?
in the off cycle years, like in the odd number years, the even number years? There's not an election that's coming up that year. Does your bill still require them to do it for those years as well?
Well,
Chairman Dixie?
registration goes on 365 days a year, whether there's an election or not. So they would need to get registered regardless of if there's an election cycle or not.
Thank you.
The chair will take privilege here. I believe when I was speaking with legal and talking about this bill, it specifies that it could be information digitally or a hard copy or even orally. They could make the announcement over the intercom. It would even allow that to happen. So just wanted to make sure the committee was aware of that. This time I'll recognize Chairman Rudd.
Thank you. There was something said in, between the recent exchange, and we discussed this in subcommittee. At nowhere in your bill does it mention the Secretary of State or does it mention the local election commission. The way the bill is written, it is the sole responsibility of the school system to do this. And for violation of this section of code, it is a misdemeanor. But again, this is not the responsibility of the election commission. Unlike the present law where the Secretary of State sends in, the election commission goes in and has a booth and registers people to vote. This is the sole responsibility of the school system. Thank you.
Chairman Dixie.
Unfortunately, the untimely filed amendment had it that the actual language is in there was the last sentence, which says the information provided must be prepared by the local election commission or the Secretary of State. Unfortunately, we were not able to add that on to this particular bill. Then we were not able to do that. And to address about the misdemeanor thing, that it says that my office also spoke with legal, and under statute, there could be a Class C misdemeanor. But it sets a high bar that says if a person knowingly fails to do an act which such persons are required to do, that means you intentionally do not do it. Sometimes things happen. We understand things move at a fast pace, but knowingly preventing someone to get this information would cause that. And that is a high bar to set. And that's like, and then it would also go up to a district attorney would have to choose to file those charges and prosecute. And it's hard to imagine a situation where that may happen. Could, probably not, but hopefully that answers your question.
Chairman Rudd.
I think you had mentioned the untimely amendment that would have made it the responsibility of the election commission instead of the school system. That's what the current law already does. So it would be repugnant to do that because they already go into the schools and have a booth and register people to vote, and they already inform them that they can be registered. Actually, I believe there's a policy of pre-registering people to sign them up before they're actually 18, and then it's effective when they're 18. So they already do that in the schools now. But thank you.
Chairman Dixie.
The statement says the information must be prepared by the local, not that it will be disseminated by them. So this is an opportunity, like again, another bite at the apple, so we don't have anybody fall through the cracks. And it's another tool in the toolbox. I can't imagine why we would not want our students involved in our election process. I can't understand why we would not want to give them every opportunity, even if we had to remind them every day, this is your obligation. It's a right, but it's also your obligation to your country, to yourself, to your family, to your ancestors, to everyone that came before you that made the sacrifice for you to be able to vote. So I think this is an important bill to keep our young people engaged. We have several students here today. And one day, hopefully, these are leadership McNairy County. You're the leaders in your community. So one day you will probably sit in these seats. And I think it's very important that you learn how government works now and we engage you in that process.
The chairman will take privilege here. I don't think we do anything to discourage our kids from voting or for those men that fought and died and bled for our country to have that right. So is there anything stopping the school systems from being able to do this now?
The issue is it's not done uniformly across the state. This helps provide a process that where we do not miss any child that is a senior. That's the whole point of this bill, is to make sure we have some uniformity, that we have some requirements, some level playing field across the state.
Also, like for instance, my daughter who graduated at 17, would she be made aware of it under this current bill you have?
If she's a senior, yes. Any senior, regardless of age.
Okay. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, actually, the question is to you and members of this committee in reference to the untimely amendment. If that was able to be attached to the bill, would that satisfy some of our members to move the bill forward?
I'm sorry, I was not listening. I apologize.
Well, again, we're talking about the untimely amendment. I was just curious if that amendment was able to be attached to the bill. Would that enable us to move the bill forward? I don't know if I'm directing it to Chairman Rudd or other members who are somewhat reluctant right now to move the bill forward.
Yeah, I don't think that I have, I think that's at the will of the committee, and the chairman has already ruled on that. So I think it makes the bill a little bit stronger, but I think it's at the will of the committee. And I think should be addressed to the chairman.
Chairman Williams.
I'm sorry, the Representative Dixie, Chairman asked a question a minute ago. Does your current bill require, or would it make one of our local LEA, members of the local LEA, violate a misdemeanor based upon this?
Possibly, like I said, but that bar is what it says right now. It says clear that a violation only if a person knowingly fails to do an act which such persons are required to do by this title, and it's an extremely high burden.
Chairman Williams.
Does the amendment that was untimely filed that you mentioned earlier, does it take away a misdemeanor violation for someone who doesn't do this, or would it be the same?
It would be the
Chairman
same.
Dixie.
It would be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be a question for legal, because we've talked much about the fact that something is being done, that registrations are occurring. But I'd like to ask, if we can, of legal, in current law, is there a requirement that the Secretary of State or the local election commissions inform high school seniors that they may be eligible to register to vote? I know they conduct the registration, but is there a requirement from that the Secretary of State or the local county election commission inform high school seniors that they can be eligible to vote at age 18?
Without objection, we'll go out of session to hear from legal. Out of session.
Thank you, Matt Money from Legal. What the existing law says is that each county election commission or its designee in each county shall conduct at least one supplemental voter registration where they actually register people that are qualified each year at every public and private high school in the county for the purposes of registration of those persons who will be eligible to vote in the next election. So if they're 17 and they're going to turn 18 before the next election, then the registration is available to them. In terms of what information is provided to them or what kind of notice the students get as to when that supplemental voter registration is, I presume that information is getting out, from the school to the students, that it's available on a certain date, just like any other activity that goes on at campus that's available to a certain cohort. But I can't speak to that directly because that's not in the statute.
Any questions for legal, Representative Love?
Thank you for information. So if I understand what you just stated correctly, in law, there is no requirement that the student be informed of when the supplemental registration will occur.
Legal?
Not that I see in the existing statute that provides for it, but it seems like it would defeat the purpose of having it if they weren't aware of the supplemental voter registration.
Any other questions for legal while we're out of session? Seeing none, we'll
None for legal, but
Seeing none, we'll go back into session. And Representative Love, did you have a question?
yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Chairman Dixie, your legislation complements current law and practice by actually putting into law, if it passes, that high schools would inform high school seniors that upon turning 18, they may be eligible to vote, and also give them information about when this supplemental registration that the Secretary of State or the County Election Commission are going to occur would happen in their school. Is that correct?
Chairman Dixie.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In something that the chairman explained earlier, so this is as simple as a school could just do this by morning announcements if they wanted to, right?
Chairman
Yes.
Dixie.
Yes.
Chairman Hodges.
So, I mean, that just seems really simple. It's just like you said, another tool in the box to do. I mean, it's as simple as just in morning announcements, a school reminding people to vote, which I don't think is ever a bad thing. And I think it's good to remind kids to vote as much as possible. So, I mean, I don't see the 40-minute discussion on reminding kids to vote. It's just kind of crazy to me, but thank you.
Leader Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, there is nothing in our law that prohibits our local school board and our local superintendent from doing this now. Is that correct? A yes or a no question?
Chairman Dixie.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
You said there is nothing, right?
I said, is there anything
I'm
that
sorry.
prohibits our local school board, elected school board, and our superintendent from doing this now? A yes or a no question?
Chairman Dixie.
No.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Chairman, those are elected officials in our districts. What right do we have to override them if this is such a huge concern? Take it back to our local school boards and solicit them to do this, not us. That's why we elect local school board members. That's why we have a superintendent. So anything we do here to supersede that, I think we're overstepping our bounds. And I am not voting for this. It's up to our locals to establish this. And just like our students that we have here today, they have school board members and superintendents, they have teachers. They can interject into that process. It should not be done here at the state capitol. Thank you.
Any other questions? Chairman Dixie.
I found it interesting that with the local control comment, but we will slide right past that. But my point is, what I'm trying to make here, there's nothing that encourages the state board or those school board elections to school board to do this. This is something that helps get our students engaged, and to try to push it off on the locals. This is a very important issue here. We have local elected election commissions. We have a state elected election commissions. I think it's incumbent upon us to set the standard to make sure all of the information is disseminated equally across and throughout the state. So to push it off and say that's not our responsibility in this instance, but in another instance, we dip our hands into a local issue. We have to figure out which way we want to go here. Let's be consistent. We have to be consistent. And if we're not consistent, how do we expect consistency in the election process across for our students if we don't set the bar?
Any other questions? Previous questions been called. Yes, sir.
Again, parliamentary inquiry. You asked if there were any other questions. My hand is here based on if there are any other questions. And but yet and still someone called for the questions, and that's who you're about to recognize. I had a
If,
question.
if he's willing to withdraw his motion, I'll be glad to recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sir, for
Representative
withdrawing that.
Miller.
Just a comment, and based on a number of things that have been said, this seems to be pretty simple, a bill, and another tool in the toolkit, as you said. And Mr. Chairman, I just wonder, we're not going to go into recess, but I just wonder what those students out there are thinking right now as they see us debate this issue. Oh man, I would give anything to know what they really think is going on here. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Let's take a vote.
You making that in the form, I mean, are you making a motion? Okay. Any other questions? Question has been called on the bill. We're ready to vote on House Bill 2489 as amended to 16393. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Noes have it. Bill fails. Item number
Thank you,
5,
Mr. Chairman and committee.
House Bill 2909 by Chairman Howell. Got a proper motion? Is there a second on the bill? Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is about local control. Members, Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment number.
Okay,
Makes the bill.
just a moment. Chairman Howell, we do not have an amendment on 2909.
Okay, I have a code, but I guess that's the coding of the bill itself.
This is just a local bill.
Yes,
so-
it is.
Yes, let the record reflect that I have received a majority of 2/3 vote from the governing body, and you're recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 2909 is a private act for Bradley County, which will raise the amount the county mayor can spend from $10,000 to $25,000 without a competitive bid. That's all the bill does.
You've heard the explanation from the sponsors. Are there any questions? Questions been called on the bill. We're ready to vote on House Bill 2909. Moving on, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill moves on to calendar and rules. Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman
Chairman.
Howell.
Committee.
Item number 6, 2434 by Chairman Farmer. Without objection, will be rolled to the hill. Or no, rolled to the college chair. Item number 7 on today's agenda is 2903 by Representative Baum. Representative Baum called my office and has made me aware he has another local bill that's coming. And so at this time, so he can get everything to get it together and present it together, then we will, without objection, take this bill off notice. Bill's off notice. Item number 8 on today's agenda, House Bill 2536 by Representative Alexandra. Got a proper motion and second. It's very good to have you back in our committee rooms, Representative. A lot of thoughts and prayers have went up for you, and it's just really good to see you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's good to be here.
I do see this bill has a amendment. Can you please give us your drafting code?
Yes, sir. That would be 014789.
That is correct. I got a proper motion. Is there a second? Properly motioned and second amendment. You're recognized on your amendment. I do see it rewrites the bill. Would you like for us to go ahead and put the amendment on the bill to be discussed?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Without objection, all in favor of amendment 014789 going on to the bill, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Bill is now amended. Representative Alexander, you're recognized on your bill.
Thank you, sir. In 2014, we stopped annexation by ordinance. Land for agriculture use can only be annexed with permission from the owner and the farmer. During all those years of uncontrolled annexation, some farms were annexed with services provided and some no services provided, which, as you can imagine, would make paying taxes, fees, et cetera, potentially not worth the annexation for those who are not being provided the services. I think we are only one of a few states, maybe 10, that do not provide for de-annexation. Our farmers, and I feel certain organizations like Farm Bureau and Future Farmers of America are asking for a path forward to take for these farmers who are, their property is annexed in and they get no service. If this bill with the amendment allows a farm who has filed a Scheduled F tax form, which is the profit and loss statement for a farm to the federal government, or a Schedule E, which is farm rental profit and loss, showing that you are a legitimate farm. I think 15 acres is the minimum for the Greenbelt. If you are a legitimate farmer, I am not talking about somebody that decides to raise 10 chickens and sell a few eggs a week. I'm talking about a legitimate farm here. I mean, you do not want to file a Scheduled F with the federal government unless you are a farmer. Trust me. We have been annexed. If these farms have been annexed by the city, and if your farm lies within a mile of the existing municipal boundaries, you may be asked to be annexed by sending a copy of the original ordinance, including a map. The city would then determine within 30 days if the city was owed money for any services it might have provided for that farm. And then the farmer would be allowed, if they want to be de-annexed, to pay whatever they owe the municipality. The bill does not require any municipality to stop providing services in that area that the farm lies in. I am here to say, this state, this seal of this state right behind your heads says agriculture and commerce. We have got to help our farmers. They are dying every day. Farms are closing. They're not being passed down. And if we do not provide any kind of help we can to these farmers, we will not have commerce. The two go hand in hand. We have to work together to make our state profitable and a successful and a wonderful place to live. This bill came to me from a farmer up in Irwin, Tennessee, Unicoi County, Tennessee. And he has not received any services. He's lived on that farm since he was born, and he's 76 years old. And he got annexed in, so he's paying taxes for nothing. Another farmer came to me yesterday, has owned his farm for 48 years. The city of Chattanooga annexed it then forcibly. Services were promised, but never provided. Roads became almost impassable. He even showed me pictures of a spring in the middle of his road. When he asked the city to mow the right-of-way, they went in and put chemicals down on it. He had to move his cattle off that farm because those chemicals crossed over into his field, and he was a farmer that was an organic farmer. So he had to butcher all his cattle because he couldn't allow a chemical to be in them. He has timber on this farm. His land, he owns the farm, the timber belongs to him. And the city came to him and said, you're going, in order to cut your timber, you have to pay us a fee. Then they added a technical fee on it. Then they added an administration fee on it. The city said he had a creek on his farm and he would have to build a bridge over it. TDEC had to come in and testify against the city and tell them there's no creek on that farm. And so that was let go. The city then said, you need a bond to cut the timber, $100 per acre. Then the city said, you cannot cut any timber within 50 feet of the boundary of the public road. Then the city said he could not develop any land for 3 years after the timber was cut. Then he said they had to pay $250 per acre for the privilege of cutting the trees he owned. It goes on and on and on. When is this ever going to stop? We do everything possible we can to help our municipalities in this state. When are we going to help the farmer? I ask for your pleas to consider this. Very few farmers are going to do this, but we've got some out there that need this little bit of help. And if we can get them still producing crops, still raising cattle, we've done our state a favor and we have done this country a favor. I ask you to please consider this bill. Thank you.
Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Alexander. Thank you for being a voice for our farmers and ranchers. And as me, as a farmer, I appreciate this bill. And speaking for Tennessee farmers, we all thank you. Thank you very much.
It's my honor.
Representative Williams. Chairman Williams, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Alexander. Just had a quick question. When the annexation process happened for this farmer, did the local government there, I guess in Irwin, did they make a commitment contractually to the citizens of those communities in which they annexed? Were they guaranteed a certain timeline as it relates to the extension of services?
Representative Alexander.
Not that I'm aware of.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you. We find ourselves, part of the reason why Representative Carter worked hard about eliminating annexation by ordinance is because you could annex property and simply never extend services there.
That's exactly.
And so I understand the reason why the change. I do think that local governments have the responsibility to keep their promises to those people in which they annex, whether it's services for water and sewer or electricity or law enforcement aid. But I think it's something that we should still continue to look at, and as it relates to even ordinance based upon the current statute. So thank you for bringing the bill.
Thank you.
Representative Alexander.
I just want you to know that we have worked really hard. Mike Carter worked on this for years, guys. We need to honor him with this bill. We've worked hard to make it so that it's palatable for the cities. When we offered things like the farmer has to pay you back for any services you're given. You know, I think we're really trying. We put a mile limit on it. We've tried everywhere in the world to make this bill work for both of us because it takes both of us working together to make this state work. Thank you.
Leader Gant.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, sponsor. Good piece of legislation. I just have a question. If you have a piece of property, what is the minimum size of that property?
It has to be,
Representative Alexander.
excuse me, Chairman, sorry, thank you. It has to be a minimum of 15 acres to be considered in the green belt. That's what's considered agriculture.
Leader
Okay.
Gant.
So if we pull out, I mean, it could be on 15 acres. I mean, there could be, mom and dad live on this section of 15 acres. The son, daughter-in-law could live on other parts of the property. So if it gets de-annexed, who does, and this, say a city of whomever was providing fire and police to that 15 acres, and you de-annex it from that city, what then happens as far as first responders? I mean, is there, say a 911 call goes out from that property, is that same city that was getting the taxes going to still respond to that property?
Representative Alexander.
It is my understanding that it is currently in state code that, for example, with the fire department, let's just say a farm had a fire. Trust me, I grew up on a farm that did have fire. Our hay farm caught on fire, our hay barn. But you can contract with the fire department on your own.
Leader Gant.
Okay. Well, and we talked about this a little bit last night.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No.
But I am concerned that, I think with what Chairman Williams was alluding to, I mean, there's a concern there of who's going to respond. Is it the county or is it going to be the city? And I think we've got to, get that ironed out. I mean, because we're putting lives in jeopardy, I think, if we take it out of the city and they're no longer going to respond. It just kind of gives me a little concern there. So how do we address that?
Well,
You're recognized.
excuse me. Thank you, Chairman. I think that a lot of these farms, where these farms are a lot of these farms are located, they're already being served by the county. They're already paying county taxes also. And so some of that money that they're already paying the counties can also go and help supply the sheriff's department for a phone call. We also have, in most of these rural areas, we also have volunteer fire departments that will come out, and volunteer EMS things that will come out and take care of these situations. And truly, it will be the farmer's decision. What do I want to do? Do I want to give up my farm because I can't afford to pay the taxes on it? Or do I want to have services? And so they're going to have to negotiate that on their own with these cities and these counties. And once again, the municipalities can tell them what they want to charge for those services.
Leader Gant.
So in a situation, and I'm trying to, obviously every vote I take up here, I try to think of my district and how it affects, because there's different geographical
Sure.
layouts in different parts of our state. And Fayette County is next to Shelby County, which is a very growing, and a lot of people are moving into Fayette County. And we have urban growth boundaries that are set by our cities inside Fayette County. And so, and we have this debate, this is a debate we have back home as far as the growth goes and who responds and so forth. And so if we pass this, we're pretty much leaving it up to the landowner to work with the local city police or the city that they used to be part of, and now they're taken out. And so the county volunteer fire department would then respond. So I'm thinking about a 911 call that goes in, where somebody's injured on a four-wheeler, the house is on fire, and the 911 office is figuring out who do they dispatch. So help me understand how we get, because I can see my local people calling me saying, this is creating a situation locally that, needs to be worked out. So I don't know. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm thinking out loud as we have this conversation on how this affects our district, especially mine, that's in a different part of the state dealing with different growth patterns and so forth. So, but anyway, if you can help me feel better about that process.
Representative Alexander.
Well, I'm not sure if I can help you feel better about that process, but I know that if they go to the city and they ask to be de-annexed, there's forms they've got to fill out and discussions that have to take place. And when that happens, then they're going to have to make those decisions on what the city's going to have to make those decisions on what they want to charge them and to keep them in the 911 loop.
Up.
Okay. All right. I think you've answered most of my questions. If we can, as we move this forward, which I do support it, we can continue to have this conversation, and maybe as it gets to the floor, we can have clarity on how we address that local issue, because not every citizen is going to know to reach out to their city unless there's a process in place when they go to make application for de-annexation, that there's coordination with the 911 office and the emergency services there in that city that used to provide, that's no longer, I assume, they're going to provide, a response to that piece of land. And what makes it even more kind of frustrating is sometimes this piece of land, from what I understand, can be right in the middle of land around it can be part of the city. Is that right?
Chairman Alexander?
That's correct. I mean, there's going to be, I know that's a big concern, is the donut holes. I understand that. I don't think you're going to have that many. A lot of the donut holes were created because the cities annexed them in to begin with. So I don't think we're going to have that many. I am willing, between now and when we present on the House floor, to work with our 911 people in my area, say, what will we do if we have a farm that wants to be de-annexed? Who will provide the service, and see what we can work out.
Leader Gant?
Yeah, I think if we could provide language to the effect that requires the local, when they go in there and make that application, that they are informed somehow of who's going to respond. So they have assurance, and the city has assurance, the county has assurance, and the 911 office has assurance. So when that call comes in, there's no place for confusion at that point when responding to somebody that's their life's on the line. So if we can provide some type of clarity language in there that dictates a process of how we clarify for that owner who responds, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Rebecca?
you. Thank you, Leader Gant. I appreciate your comments, and I certainly will work to make that happen.
Any other questions? Representative Chisholm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sponsor, hypothetically, if I had a 15-acre property within a neighborhood that's heavily populated, would I be able to use this piece of legislation to de-annex from the city with that, even though I'm in the city and it's heavily populated, but that just so happens to be a 15-acre piece of property?
Representative Alexander?
Thank you, Chairman. As long, sir, as you have had been filing with the federal government, your Scheduled F or your Scheduled E, then you are farm, sir. And you, no matter how densely populated it became after that farmland was there, then you are allowed to do that, sir. Yes.
You're recognized.
So, I'm noticing how bills affect rural and urban areas differently, but my concern with the bill is in my district, we've had conversations about de-annexations over the last few years anyway.
Yes, sir.
So my concern is some bad actors using this bill to get out of paying taxes, even though they would probably heavily rely on the city's services. So that's my concern.
Representative Alexander?
Well, sir, I've been a farmer's daughter my whole life. And there's not many bad actors that are farmers, because they like hard work. They believe in it. They believe in God, who gives them the land and the water and the air. And there's very few bad farmers. Now, don't get me wrong, there's bad apples in everything. But I don't think, sir, that anybody that goes through the trouble of filing a Schedule F with the federal government is going to be a bad actor because they got too much information on them with the federal government, and the federal government should be catching it. So hopefully we would not have that situation.
Chairman Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative Alexander. And of course, I worked on a farm growing up too. Let me ask you that in this de-annexation bill, if I'm reading it right, so they make application to the city, and then the city has so long a time to respond to them. Then if they don't respond, then they're automatically out. Is that correct?
Who's automatically out? I'm sorry.
Okay, they reply to the. I'm sorry, Chairman.
You're fine. You're recognized.
They apply to the city to be de-annexed. Then does the city just have a certain amount of time to answer their de-annexation question? And if they don't answer it and let them out, then are they automatically out then?
Representative Alexander.
The city has 30 days.
30 days. Thank you.
Chairman Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, after that 30 days, let's go back to another scenario. Let's say that they have been provided some services or whatever, and then within that 30 days, the city comes back and asks them, okay, you owe us this amount of money. Is there any timeline in there where there could be negotiations or anything about, because maybe the farmer doesn't believe that he owes that amount of money back to the city, but yet the city is questioning that. And then with that 30-day extension, does that stop that then if they're in negotiations with a payback or anything?
Representative Alexander.
I'm not sure. I mean, as far as the negotiations, of course, I know they're through. I don't think there'll be any negotiations. I think the city's going to come and say to the farmer, if you want to be annexed, this is what you're going to owe me, because this is what I've provided for you. And it probably needs to be an itemized statement.
Chairman Carr.
Thank you. Okay, then I guess that's my question. One thing on this is providing back to the city, and me and the late Judge Carter had this conversation several times. If the city doesn't get compensated back what it thinks it ought to, the farmer thinks that's not right, is there a point in time to negotiate this, or do they have to take each other to court? Does it say anything in this particular legislation?
Representative Alexander.
We can ask for legal, but I believe it does not say anything specific in this.
Chairman Carr for a follow-up.
Thank you. I don't believe it does either, and that's one of my concerns there. If there would be any ramifications before that, that's just another concern I bring. Maybe it can be addressed, but anyway, of course, I've always been a city man as far as everything. And like you said, I hate for the donut holes to appear. Don't know that they would that much or whatever, but I do have some reservations with this and Bill. So you know where I stand. I've talked to you. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate your questions. Thank you.
The chairman will take privilege just to let the committee know I do have a speaker that wants to speak on the bill. So I'm going to recognize Chairman Williams, who's last on our list, and then we'll hear from the speaker, and then we can take more questions. Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Alexander, your bill does not talk about suit or anything. It just simply says that the city has, or the municipal government who was annexed has 30 days to comply with the request based upon.
That is correct.
Anything outside of that regarding the extension of a portion or all of plan of services is not described in your bill. Would you agree with me that if this were to happen based upon the terms of your bill, then that local city would have to, or municipal government would have to sue the farmer? I mean, they'd have to bring suit in civil suit against the farmer in order to collect anything they felt like they were owed. Is that correct?
Representative Alexander.
If the farmer didn't agree to it, yes, sir, I think you're correct.
Okay.
Follow-up, Chairman.
So they could, however, put a lien on the property, and then the farmer would have to eliminate or remove that lien. But any entity could put a lien on property based upon the current statute.
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I don't have anyone else on the list right now, so we will go, without objection, we'll go out of session to hear from Chad Jenkins. Out of session. Mr. Jenkins, please give us your name, who you're with, and you will have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chad Jenkins, Tennessee Municipal League. Thank you for the opportunity. Mindful of the time and a desire to hit that target, let me just be as brief as possible. First, I enjoy eating every day, and I hope that everybody understands me speaking against this bill doesn't mean I hate farmers or don't like farmers or don't appreciate farmers. And I think all of our cities understand that as well. The number one concern I would say is the bill, the way I read it and it's drafted, if I'm looking at the correct amendment, it's true that that if you're a farmer, you must file a Schedule F. But that does not mean you must be a farmer to file a Schedule F. We have people who you walk down the road, you say that's a farm, and everybody would agree. They file Schedule F. There's also folks who keep chickens in their backyard or a few hives. They also file Schedule F. So filing a Schedule F does not make you a full-time farmer. It means you have agricultural income, period. $1 earned is $1 reported. In addition, if you rent your property to somebody to cut hay on it, that also qualifies under this. One time a year, cutting hay would qualify you as a farmer under this bill. I will defer to legal, but I do not see anything in this amendment that references the green belt or 15-acre requirement. So the question is what we're talking about, I think, is one that's important to first confirm and have an agreement on what properties we're talking about. The 1 mile, 1 mile doesn't seem like a lot, but then you think about your city limits and the various sizes of cities that we have, and both densely populated and then those that are smaller. 1 mile from their border all the way around. That's not just from one side, all the way around. That's a lot of properties in some cases that you're talking about. Lastly, let me just say that to Representative Williams' point, I think the reason we had 1101 and the reason that we had is that there were selective annexations that did pick and choose, cherry pick, if you will. And that's the reason that 1101 came into being. And the idea was that you can't pick. If you're going to serve an area, you serve it all. And so that's been done, and those areas have been incorporated. And to allow them to now, after all of that procedure and that process became the policy of this state, to back it out arbitrarily and allow them to, without any discussion, without any review, simply filing a declaration and being out in 90 days is problematic. If donut holes were wrong the first time, they're wrong again to create them intentionally. So that I'm mindful of the time. Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins, if you wouldn't mind just staying there at the table, I have a few people with questions for you. We're still out of session. Leader Gant.
Thank you, Chairman. This kind of goes back to my former line of questioning about the cities and the counties agreeing who's going to respond to a accident that occurs on a 15-acre. I have a bunch of these in Fayette County, in my district. Some of them are inside the city, some are outside. They're in the urban growth boundaries. I mean, they're in the reserve areas. I mean, I can see this being a huge problem in my county, and I just don't want to do anything that I'm going to. And I support this. I support our farmers. I don't think any of us in here don't support our farmers and the gratitude that we have towards them. My only concern is the 911 call that comes in from that four-wheeler that the kid was on it. He ran through a barbed wire fence, and his life is in jeopardy in a matter of minutes of either he dies or he's living, or a heart attack, or a small lawnmower accident, a tractor, anything that could happen that, would deserve a 911 call that comes in. How do I have assurance when that application is put in to be de-annexed on who is going to respond? And I don't want, we'll figure this, we'll leave it up to the owner to get with whoever and all that. I mean, there needs to be some clarity here in the process of if you come out of a city. Chairman Shaw, if you don't mind, can you move to the left just a little bit where I can, no, to the left.
Your other left.
Thank you. How can we get clarity in that process, with the city police versus the county, the EMS responding? How can we get clarity in that situation?
Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please recognize yourself.
Chad Jenkins,
Thank
Tennessee Municipal League. Again, I wish I could offer you the certainty of that clarity. That's one of the main concerns that you have with donut holes is, so by law, there would be notice to, I guess the record's now kept through ECD and then the comptroller. There'd be notice for GIS purposes and for determining city limits that would now be in the unincorporated areas, which means it would be a county responsibility, but that could be a volunteer department. I mean, we don't know what's in those counties. It wouldn't be the city's obligation anymore. 911, did they have the latest records? Did they have the update? Who did they choose to notify? But it would be something other than the city's responsibility. But the city then, in some cases, may be the closest or the best able to respond, but would not be obligated to do so. And that puts us in a bad situation of having someone that is surrounded by city limits that we have liability concerns about responding to because they're not ours. And yet we have to watch that barn burn or that house burn because, and we could get there. So what do you do in that situation? So you ignore it and let it burn, or you serve it anyway and then figure out how the taxpayers are getting, I mean, so the point is, you just don't create donut holes and then you don't have those situations, which is why we've done everything as the state and this body has taken the action to try to eliminate those wherever we can. So.
Leader Gant.
Is there a way, since you represent the cities, I'm sure there is a way we can do this. How can we bring clarity to this situation if this legislation moves forward and we pass this and this does become law? What would be your recommendation to bring clarity to that situation?
Mr. Jenkins.
Chad Jenkins, Tennessee Municipal League. I suppose you're asking me to perfect this bill in some way. How would one do that? Well, I think the best answer I could give you on that question alone was, in prior efforts, there have been that were defeated. This proposal's been around and been defeated several times, but one of those included that limit it to those areas that were contiguous to the border. So you had to be touching the unincorporated areas. So at least if it was de-annexed, you don't create a donut hole in doing that, if that makes sense.
Any other questions for the speaker? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jenkins, it seems as if there's somewhat of a discrepancy on the definition of what is a farm. And I'm thinking 15 acres and the filing of a Schedule F. You did say, or correct me if I'm wrong, that is not the definition of a farm in this legislation. Is that how you interpret that?
Mr. Jenkins.
Chad Jenkins, Tennessee Municipal League. I'm looking at amendment, the drafting code 014789, and presuming that that is the correct amendment, then yes, sir, Mr. Miller, that's exactly. So I would defer to legal on that question, but I'm looking at E, which subsection E, which defines what we're talking about. And then that's continued on and file a Schedule F or a Form 4835 or an E. So I don't, unless I'm missing, so I don't see a reference to Greenbelt or a 15 acre. I quite possible that I've missed it, but that's what I was saying. I haven't noticed it.
At this time, I'll recognize legal for a response.
Thank you, Matt Mundy from legal. I believe that's correct. Because of the way the bill's drafted, I think we're bound by the definition of, quote, property used primarily for agricultural purposes. That's what's used throughout the bill in terms of what type of property is able to de-annex from the city. It's incongruent with the definition that we use under Title 67, Chapter 5, which is our classification for property taxes, our definition of agricultural property or agricultural land with the 15 acres that constitutes a farm unit engaged in the production or growing of agricultural products, or it's been farmed by the owner or his parent or spouse for at least 25 years and so forth and so on. I'm not familiar enough with the IRS Schedule F or the IRS Form 4835 in terms of what criteria you have to meet to be able to file those forms, but I presume that they don't line up exactly with what our definition for agricultural land for purposes of state property taxes.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the way I understand that, and based on what Mr. Jenkins is saying, is that, and I think you commented on it, filing a Schedule F is not necessary. It doesn't matter with this legislation.
Legal.
To the contrary, I think it absolutely matters. I think you have to you have to file to be able to operate under this section to de-annex a property. You have to fall within that definition of property used primarily for agricultural purposes, which means that you have filed a federal income tax return containing one of those two forms that reference the Schedule F or the IRS Form 4835.
Representative
you.
Miller for follow-up.
Mr. Chairman, well, the next question would be for Mr. Jenkins.
Okay, we're still out of session, sir. You're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, you may have an answer to this. I don't know, but let's take a county, Davidson County or Shelby County. And when you talk about donut holes, would you have any idea? I don't know how many farms that find this particular definition for a farm that's in Shelby County. Would you have any idea how many farms under this definition could be impacted within the boundaries of Shelby County or Davidson County or Knox County, any county you think you may have some thought about?
Mr. Jenkins.
Chad Jenkins, Tennessee Municipal League. Representative Miller, I wish I could tell you with absolute certainty a number because I think it would help the cause, but I would tell you that your sentiments are right and are when there are in fact properties within Nashville, within Memphis proper that would qualify under this based on my conversations with those cities. They didn't give me a specific number, but there are in fact properties that they are certain would satisfy the definition of this bill that you would not, or that I would not consider a farm if I wouldn't even notice it if I drove by it.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Chairman Williams, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for coming today. Based upon TML and your representation of cities and towns across the state, does TML have a role or an opinion about how long the plan of services should take for a city as it relates to any annexation, either the old method or the new method of annexation?
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes, sir. I would, and thank you for the question because I wanted to answer you earlier when you were
Yeah.
saying this. So, yeah, you make a commitment, you ought to honor that commitment.
Right.
The statute says reasonable time, but I think whatever that means. But I think the fact is, if somebody is promised services, they ought to be delivered. And to to the sponsors' comments before, there is a cause of action. There is an avenue right now. If a city annexes you, you are promised as part of that. The law requires a provision of a plan of services. And if that city is not honoring that services, absolutely. You can go to court now and get that resolved by that judge, because that is a commitment. We annexed you and we promised to provide these services. We're collecting property taxes for it. So absolutely, they should be providing those services.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you, and I appreciate your testimony as a former city councilman who annexed people by ordinance, and as a state representative who changed that statute. I think it's really important. There are just like we've created donut holes through annexation over time, inadvertently. I don't think it was something anyone's purpose in order to do that. We have still in my community and all across the state where cities and towns have made commitments, and it's been 25, 30, 40 years in some instance. The fact is that no individual citizen is going to go out nor has the means by which to sue a city for them to keep their promises. So I appreciate your testimony today, but I do think the statute should be changed based upon your agreement and testimony here today, that we should, by annexation of any type, in the state now, based upon the new method, should set a standard for cities on how long they have in order to extend plan of services. And so when as a former city councilman, it takes us 31 years to provide sewer to an area which we annexed, that is way too long. And so I do think it's important that we understand what's going on in the instance of this farmer. I get it. I do think there are some challenges associated with definition, of which we can have a discussion after we go out of session. But I do think it's very important for us to have a discussion and for you to be here today. I know you have a difficult job. You have many kids to represent across the state, all varying sizes and financial abilities. But I do think it's important that we do that. I think finally, Chairman, one last question. Based upon my understanding of how fire and safety extension services is, our municipal governments and city governments have ratings as it relates to their response times. And our insurance premiums as individual homeowners and commercial property owners and retail businesses is based upon this rating. And so but there's also a requirement by the county and city governments to maintain a minimum rating, which means they would have to respond to emergencies, whether fire or safety as it relates to our citizens across the state. If that's the case, would we not know whether or not some farm or property which borders the city has services, not necessarily from the city, which you represent, but also from the county? Is that not true?
Mr. Jenkins.
Chad Jenkins, Tennessee Municipal League. I think that the question of response times in 911, which was the Leader Gant's question, is a matter of what 911, when they dispatch, do they recognize that? I mean, it's a mile within a city limits. When they look at that and that address pops up, do they recognize that as a call within the city of fill in the blank, and they dispatch that truck or that police car when it's actually in the unincorporated area because it was annexed? And so it becomes an issue of not whether that department knows necessarily, but that dispatch when that call comes in. and how that is determined and who gets dispatched to there. Did the neighbor call the city to report and dispatch there? Or, so it depends on how the call comes in, who makes it, what's reported and what's done. So yes, the individual departments would know in the abstract, in basics, but in the heat of the moment, when you're responding to a call, when the dispatch comes and who reports that, I think is where the confusion has been evidenced with other donut holes in the past, and we would, so I think that's more than likely where the issue would arise.
Thank you.
Representative Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two questions to you. Number one, with you said it would affect Nashville, and I'm just curious, is there a metro government, how it would affect Nashville? And then number two, with the Schedule F farm, since it had to be a Schedule F farm since 2014, that still means that they've had to make money on that farm in 3 of the last 5 years. So there is still a requirement, right? I mean, they're still required to be a farm in order to get that Schedule F in the first place, to file for that Schedule F. So I just want to make that clear and make sure that's accurate.
Chad Jenkins for the Tennessee Municipal League. My reference to Nashville was in response to Representative Miller's questions about the larger cities. And so, yes, by the definition of this, there will be properties in there. So that was my reason for responding to his in Memphis and in Nashville, that there would be. Regarding your question about since 2014, can you direct me to the language so I can make sure I'm looking at the right?
No, I was under the impression that it had to be Schedule F since 2014.
The 2014, Representative Hodges, is when the new bill came into being, the new law that stated that a municipality could not annex a farm without the permission of the landowner. So these farms that have been annexed prior to the law in 2014, when they weren't asked whether or not they could be annexed, they were just annexed without their will, are only the farmers that are allowed to go back and ask the municipality to relieve them of this.
And that's kind of my point, though. It had to be a
Right.
Schedule F since 2014 or prior to 2014.
Both.
Correct.
Both before and after 2014.
And in order to be a Schedule F, it has to be a farm that's making profit.
That is correct, or loss, depending on how they're filing their taxes.
Roger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To you, so the majority of my district is within a mile of the state line. So my question becomes, and there are plots of 15 acres or a little bit more that currently they actually designate as farms right now. And I understand what the bill is trying to do, but I'm afraid we use the term donut holes. I'm afraid we're gonna have more donuts than we can eat because well, let me ask the question. Does this bill, in your opinion, does this bill create a loophole for both the farmer and the city, or does it create a loophole where a person, if they wanted to, they can get out of paying municipal taxes? And does it create a loophole where cities could opt out of giving services? Do you see where that could be misconstrued?
Chad Jenkins, Tennessee Municipal League. Thank you for the question. So I think, yes, the issue with this, one of the issues is that this, as I tried to state, I believe this would be ripe for abuse by people who are not farmers, as you and I would recognize, to be able to claim that privilege under this and exercise the rights granted under this. You do not have to be 15 acres. I think that was clarified earlier. There's nothing in here about green belt. You don't have to be 15 acres. The Schedule F, just to Representative Hodges' question before, you have to file a Schedule F, and you have to have been a farm that was annexed after 2014. The two are not a requirement together. All right? It doesn't mean you have to have filed Schedule F every year since 2014. All right, so I think I just want to clarify that. So all you have to do is serve notice to a city to have $1 of income that you're reporting on a Schedule F. You don't have any requirement for minimum or maximum size. There's nothing. And you, within 90 days, are out. So the question to what about cities? Well, I could tell you, the cities don't have an obligation to provide you services any longer. And they're not going to, in all likelihood. There's no reason. It's not fair to the other taxpayers who are paying those. So, so I think, yes, you would, in all likelihood, lose services by the city for those property. And it would also allow people to game the system that aren't farms and qualify to pull out.
Chairman will take privilege for just a second, Representative Chisholm. Chairman Williams, would you mind getting a chair so she can?
I tried to make her stand down there.
Yeah, why don't you go down there and sit?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Chisholm, you're recognized for a follow-up.
So my question now is, how do you view this bill of affecting census data?
Mr. Jenkins.
I'm sorry, sir. You repeat that question.
Do you think this bill has any way to affect census data, since these farms will no longer be in that city? Would the cities be able to count those people as their citizens when it's time for census data to come in?
Mr. Jenkins.
Chad Jenkins, not legally.
Okay. Representative, I'm sorry, Chairman Rudd.
I looked up on the website. I'm certainly not an accountant, but it said on the IRS, one of the which has kind of been a little bit of misinformation. It says to file a Schedule F, your profit and loss, it says that farming or breeding must be your main source of income. So I would assume that if that's going to be your main income, you're going to have some acreage or a business model that will potentially deliver that.
Mr. Jenkins, you're recognized.
I am not a tax attorney, I don't practice it, but that is not my understanding, and that is not, so I'm not sure the site, I don't believe it has to be your primary source of income to file a Schedule F. My understanding is that a dollar earned is a dollar reported. That's the way the IRS works. Income is income. And it's a matter of how you record that income, and if it's related to an agricultural product as defined by the service there, then you're required to, that's the mechanism by which you, along with your 1040, report that income. So that's my understanding. There is a requirement about the number of years and what the IRS considers a farming operation, and that's where the majority of your income and the 3 out of 5 comes into play.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Well, it's obvious that it's a two-sided problem here. I raised on a farm all my life, and I know how important it is to feed not only Tennessee, but America. I realize that, but I do think that what we're about to do, if we pass this legislation, As it is, I think we fixing to create a problem, more of a problem than what we've got now. You know, I wish there was some way we could, do we know, and I don't know who I would ask this, maybe the sponsor of the legislation, maybe I would, but I'm gonna ask and you can tell me if how many farmers right now are in this predicament in Tennessee? Do we know?
Representative Shaw, are you asking Mr. Jenkins
Mr.
that
Jenkins,
question?
would you know?
No, sir, I don't, particularly with the current definitions, I don't know, but to the sponsor, I don't know definitively, no, sir.
Representative Shaw, I'll come back to you for that question when we go back in session for the sponsor.
Thank you. Just one other thing. I'll wait then. I'll just hold my other comment until we come back.
Sorry, Representative Shaw, I think with the current definition, the answer to your question is yes, it would be a lot more than you're anticipating because of the way the current definition is. But as for the sponsor's intent, that's not my place to answer that. So.
Chairman Reedy. Okay. Without any other questions, I'll be glad to, without objection, we'll go back into session. Representative Shaw, I'll recognize you for your question for the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sponsor to you, do you know how many farmers right now in this predicament, that this problem you're trying to fix? Do you know how many we got?
No, sir, I do not. That would be something I would have to talk with the Department of Agriculture about and see if they happen to know.
Representative Shaw for a follow-up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Do you think that maybe we could do a summer study or something on this and try to get the legislation in a posture where we would be effective for the farmer as well as for cities? Obviously, the way this is phrased, I don't know if this would be, but do you think that would be best if we try to put something together, study this and make sure that we done something that would be conducive to both parties?
Representative Shaw, are you making that in the form of a motion?
Well, I wasn't. I was kind of just feeling the sponsor
Okay.
out. I'd like to make that if she felt that way, but.
Well, if you weren't making a motion, I will recognize the sponsor for answer. Representative Alexander.
I do prefer that this does not go to summer study. Mike Carter worked years on this, and we beat this issue to death. But I am willing to roll it if I need to and get the language like you would like it. But I'm at the will of the committee, Chairman.
Representative Alexander, let me see if I can help bring us to where we are. I think this has been calendared 3 times. So if you roll it, it will go to special calendar. And I will have to get clarification from legal, but if we do not vote on this, it would not take a reconsider of actions to bring it back up, correct?
Matt Mundy for the record. I was under the impression that anything that was put on special calendar needed a motion and a second to be reconsidered, but I would have to check with the clerk just to make sure, which we could do in the interim.
I can recess for the clerk to get an answer on that. So without objection, we will recess to call the chair. All right, folks, thanks for being patient. We wanted to make sure we do everything correctly here. So, after consultation with the, sponsor of this bill, I'm going to recognize Leader Grant for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, and sponsor. I'm going to make a motion that we roll House Bill 2536 to the Hill.
Got a proper motion and second. All those in favor of moving House Bill 2536 to the Hill, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill's moved to the Hill. All right, House Bill 2797 by Representative Stewart. Representative Stewart is not with us, so Representative Mitchell is going to present this bill. I do have a motion. Is there a second? Got a proper motion and second. Yeah, I do see it has an amendment. Can I recognize you for the drafting code, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. 015446.
That is correct. Do I have a motion? Motion and second on the amendment. Looks like the amendment rewrites the bill. Would you like for us to place this on the bill to be
Yes, sir.
discussed? Without objection, we're ready to vote on amendment number 15446 going on the bill. Please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill is now amended. You're recognized on the bill, Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is just an election security bill. This is to streamline the process for former felons to be reinstated to get their voting rights. Now the onus is put on that former felon to go forward and to petition, to get their voting rights back. This bill would have the releasing entity notify the clerk's office that this person, this former felon, has completed their sentence, completed their probation, they have paid restitution, paid their fines, and they're eligible now to be a voter again. I just think that protects our election integrity a whole lot more than allowing it go the other way, and it streamlines the system statewide so we know how the system works in all 95 counties.
You heard the explanation of the sponsor. Is there any questions? Question has been called on the bill. We're ready to vote on House Bill 2797 as amended. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Noes have it. Bill fails.
I don't like elections.
Item number 10, House Bill 2908 by Chair Lady Moody. I will recognize her from the desk. Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized. Do I have a
Thank you.
motion? Proper motion and second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This private act comes from the beautiful city of Mumford, Tennessee in Tipton County. And basically what it does, it is currently the city of Mumford's charter calls for newly elected officials to take office immediately after the election. And what this change in the charter will do is to allow time for the certification of the election, as well as for the transition from old office holders to newly elected ones. And that's simply what it changes.
Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Just a quick question. Is there a time limit? If they had a problem with the election and took them a month to certify, then there was an appeal and.
Chair Lady Moody?
I didn't discuss that specifically, but in what we did discuss was like in the case of a change in your mayor's seat, there are documents and bills and businesses, daily business. So I would think with this change, it wouldn't happen until it got certified, because that is the qualifying part they're changing, is the election being I'm lost my thought.
Certified.
Chairman Williams.
Certified, not qualified, excuse me.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of House Bill 2908, moving on, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you.
Item number 11 on today's agenda is House Bill 2740 by Chairman Holtzclaw. I will recognize him from the chair. I do see it has several amendments. Do I have a motion on the bill? Got a proper motion? Is there a second? Properly motioned and second. Chairman Holtzclaw, can you give us the drafting code of the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. 016914.
Do I have a motion and second on the amendment? Proper motion and second. Looks like the amendment rewrites the bill. Would you like for us to place this on to the bill to be discussed?
Yes, Chairman,
Without
please.
objection, all in favor of amendment number 16914 going on the bill, please say aye. Opposed, no. The bill is now amended. Chairman Holtzclaw, you're recognized on House Bill 2740.
Thank you, Chairman. And HB 2740 with the amendment is basically stating if a county has a zoning that allows animal processing plant, that they can't restrict them to less than 100 units. And that's basically what the bill does.
Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Yes, sir, to sponsor. So they would have to slaughter 100 animals?
They wouldn't have to, they just can't be restricted to less than 100. It's not saying they have to.
Representative Shaw for follow-up.
Yes, sir. I'm trying to get moms around that. So
Current restrictions, there's some of them that limit 25 units. And a lot of these processing plants, it's hard to make money at 25 units. Some of them have to do 35 units just to pretty much make money. And the other big issue is there's a backlog. Some of these people that want to process their meat may be backlogged up to 2 years, and it's trying to resolve some of those issues.
All right. Chairman Holtzclaw. Okay, we still got. There's a couple more amendments it looks like needs to go on this. Can we put all the amendments on it to discuss it? Any objection?
No, wear it out. Thank you.
All in favor of, I need a motion and second on amendment 16418. Proper motion and seconded. We'll go ahead. All in favor of amendment 16418, say aye. Opposed, no. Amendment's now on the bill. And that should take care of them. So you've heard the explanation from Chairman Holtzclaw. At this time, if you've got any questions, please let us know. Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the definition of 100 units, maybe I read this incorrectly. That would also mean 200 hogs or 400 sheep. Is that correct, Mr. Sponsor?
That is correct, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this affect municipalities as well?
It's wherever it's zoned. I mean, that's typically ag land where this is zoned. Pretty much straightforward.
So if somebody has one of those farms that we were just got done talking about in a subdivision, we could have a slaughterhouse in the middle of a subdivision?
If it's zoned that way.
Thank you.
Representative Calfee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sponsor, I've got a question. This is something very sensitive to one of my county mayors. And evidently, they had approved a slaughterhouse, and then things jumped the rail. Do you know the reason for that?
That's one instances, and I think it's between the mayor and the individual. I don't know all the details of it, so I mean, I can't speak to it specifically.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Could you, the amendment we just put on, 1648 that exempts, 8 counties or cities within, can you tell me why they wanted to be exempt?
But basically, they wanted, you have several issues where you get into subdivisions and that kind of stuff, and they were concerned about that, so we exempted that out.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Leader, Camp, you're right.
Thank you, Chairman. Sponsor, we didn't have a chance to talk about this before committee, and otherwise I would have asked this question to you before committee. But does this preempt any local government, county board of zoning appeals from this process?
Basically, the amendment tried to correct all the zoning issues, so I mean, it's wide open if it's zoned for ag and they want it to be a processing plant there, it will be effective.
Leader Gant.
So does this preempt local government and like the Board of Zoning Appeals Board from approving a project like this?
No, it
Chairman
does
holds
not.
call.
No, it does not.
Leader Gant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Shaw.
Thank you. To Chairman, if, by the time, if this should pass and get to the floor, would you take an amendment for me to exempt my counties out?
Is that question to the chairman or to the sponsor? You said chairman.
To Chairman,
No, you need to ask the sponsor to.
sponsor.
Sponsor.
I
Good
know
spot.
that you've already got an exemption of like 360,000 people or more is exempted out. I don't know where that falls in your district.
Well,
Representative Shaw.
thank you. I just don't think I'd want a slaughterhouse to just pop up anywhere. I just want to protect the district. I guess I know that some people have exempted out, and I couldn't support the bill unless I was exempted out of it.
Well,
Chairman holds call.
that's your opportunity to do so, so.
Well, thank you, sir.
Representative Hodges.
The same question to you. Would you accept a friendly amendment on the floor to exempt some more counties?
Chairman
If I
Holt's
wanted to
call.
exempt mine as well?
I think we've worked with individuals and discussed it, and we come up with that population. And for that, we'll move forward with it.
Chairman Williams.
I'm not going to ask if I can exempt my county, but I do have this question. In the instance of my county and 2 cities, if they currently have slaughterhouses, it has to go through the BZA, right?
Chairman holds call.
So in their instance, if they went to the BZA to get approval, all your bill would say is, if approved, they can't make a requirement that they slaughter less than 100 hogs.
Chairman
That-
holds call.
That is correct.
But they would still, sorry, Chairman,
You're fine.
but they would still, that's why it would not supersede the local zoning requirements of the communities.
You are correct, Chairman.
Okay, finally, Chairman,
Chairman Williams.
is there no cap on the number of hogs that you could have? For instance, could I have 25,000 hogs and then ship them by rail to a different place for them to be slaughtered and never slaughter any hogs?
Chairman holds call.
That's a good question, but I mean, you've got to have the facility to handle something like this. I mean, even 100 units is quite a big process. I mean, technically, yeah, you could go up more if that's your question, yes.
Chairman Williams.
I think that's a little bit of the concern I have is there's no ratio described as the number of, obviously, we have hogs that we're wanting to grow to a certain size until such time we could slaughter them. So you could have, I don't know what they're called, clutches of hogs that you're trying to raise here. So I'm a little bit concerned that the number of hogs could get out of hand versus the number slaughtered. So I don't know what a ratio would be, but obviously that'd be something that we need to consider. Thank you.
Chairman Holtzclaw.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Question has been called on the bill as amended, House Bill 2740. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. Bill fails. Item number 12 on today's agenda, House Bill 2336 by Chairman Rudd. Do I have a motion? This bill, I'm sorry, it's my fault. This bill has been taken off notice. Without objection, off notice. Item 13, House Bill 2159 by Chairman Whitson. Proper motion and second. I do see it has an amendment. Can you please give us your drafting code?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I have amendment number 016107. That makes the bill.
That is correct. Do I have a motion and second? Properly motioned and second. We'll go ahead and put this on the bill so because it rewrites it. All in favor of amendment number 16107 going on the bill, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill is now amended. You're recognized, Chairman Whitson, on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. And Mr. Chairman, before we go forward, just want to remind the committee, I do have a request for this bill for this one-year pilot program for just Williamson County only for the 2022 election cycle, the 3 elections. And it's signed by the chairman of the Williamson County Election Commission and also our administrator of elections for the Williamson County Election Commission.
You've heard the explanation from the sponsor. Are there any questions? Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
I just want to remind the committee, I believe it was last week, or a week before last, we passed the major audit bill from Secretary of State. And I told you that there was a separate bill coming that's worded exactly within, and that this is the exact wording within that bill about Williamson County's pilot program. So it's we've already passed this wording at a separate bill, except this is just in case that major bill didn't make it through, Williamson County survives. So this is what we've already voted on, the text that was within my bill.
Thank you. Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
And I'd like to thank Chairman Rudd for his help on this legislation also.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on amended bill 2159. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
There's a couple of items we need to take care of, so we'll go ahead and deal with those. House Bill number 0645 will be rolled to the hill without objection. Rolled to the hill. House Bill 2434 without objection will be rolled to the hill. Rolled to the hill. Are there any announcements or personal orders from the committee? Chairman Carr.
Motion to adjourn.
That is a proper motion, non-debatable. Adjourn. All remaining bills will be heard next week.